23 shots, nearly 3 XG created, plenty of open play chances, and all the field tilt in the world were not enough for Arsenal last night versus Newcastle. We were beaten 2-0 at home in the first leg of our Carabao Cup semi-final. Let's figure out where it all went wrong. Yes, and welcome back to another episode of Arsenal Unfiltered, your 3 times a week dose of Arsenal coverage with me, your host Mark. As you heard at the top, this is a match review of Arsenal 0, Newcastle 2. It is, what day is it? It's the 8th of January, nearly 7 o'clock. So I am about 12 hours removed, maybe just under 12 hours removed from the game. And I'm still a little bit lost on this one, and I think there's tons and tons of questions to get into and think about on the back of this defeat. It ends our 13-match unbeaten run. It would have been 14 had we avoided defeat last night, and you could tell from the reaction online that there were really, really mixed feelings about this game. Obviously, everyone disappointed to lose, everyone nervous about where it leaves us for the tie overall, but were there some green shoots, or were we just terrible at the things we've been terrible at all year and we haven't managed to fix them? I think you probably fall into one of those camps in terms of, okay, well, actually they're a really good team, and how have we lost that? Because all the data and a lot of the general performance was good, and actually you're kind of looking at it going, that is a bit of a crazy result from the game that played out. Or you fall into the camp of, these are the same problems that we've had all season. Why have we not addressed them, fixed them, done something different? And that can be frustrating. I don't really mind where you fall into. You can support Arsenal however you want to support them, but we are going to discuss, I think, both sides of that coin today, and really dive into a couple of really key questions towards the end. We've got a question on Blue Sky, and then we really need to discuss some of the things about how do we fix what's going on with Arsenal this year, and are we boring? Is it our fault? All of these things, we need to start looking at them. But it wouldn't be a match review podcast if we didn't start with the lineup, and I must admit, the lineup gave me hope. It really did. I was very nervous before this game. You've got to think we've lost Saka. Last game we couldn't start any of Saka, Havertz, Martinelli and Ødegaard. So I was not expecting much in the way of forward threat. I wasn't expecting Sterling to be on the bench, although we'll come to Sterling. And we ended up with a forward threat which had Ødegaard, Havertz and Martinelli in it. So I was quite pleasantly surprised. Let's do the whole team. Raya in goal as expected. Jurrien Timber, William Saliba, Gabriel Magalhaes, and MLS. Miles Lewis-Skelly got the left back call. An interesting one. Thought Calafiori would play this game because of Newcastle's threat, but actually it really does look like Arteta has settled on Calafiori and Miles Lewis-Skelly sharing minutes. And for all the things that went wrong last night, I don't think you could say Miles Lewis-Skelly's performance was one of them. I thought he was good. He obviously came off for Zinchenko towards the end, but when he was on, he had a couple of really composed moments on the ball, got away from a couple of hairy situations, some bad not some bad tackles, but some tackles that could have been disastrous for us in terms of turning the ball over. He avoided a couple of those and did well and progressed the ball nicely. In the midfield, we had Rice, Partey, Ødegaard, which we're getting used to seeing a lot, aren't we? Partey is available so much more and is playing so much better than he did last season. So, yeah, it's interesting that he continues. He played well as well, I thought. This is probably too early to get onto this, actually, but I don't think there was a player, apart from maybe Havertz, who had a bad game last night, and we've lost 2-0. There were moments for everyone, which I thought, you could do better there. But there was no one I was like looking at and going, you have had a really, really bad night. You could say no one also had a good night, but we will come on to individual performances. And like I say, Trossard, Havertz, Martinelli is the front three. Interestingly, Trossard played off the right this time. Martinelli was off the left, and I thought his performance was so much better than the last time he played off the right. But Trossard doesn't look comfortable there either, does he? I posted on Blue Sky, it's 4 games now without Bukayo Saka, and we've tried 3 different solutions. Martinelli, Trossard and Nwaneri off the right. I think if Nwaneri is fit, he's got that spot behind Bukayo Saka now, in my opinion at least. I don't know if the manager shares that, and maybe it'll be different game to game. Does Arteta want to risk the kind of repeats of the previous game against Brighton with Nwaneri, where he turned the ball over a lot against a team like Newcastle, who are so good on the counter? So even if he was fit, would he have played? Let's get into the game. What I'm going to do is I'll go through the game, start to answer some of the questions. The first question I'll answer is, where did this night go wrong, and break down some of those, the 2 camps I spoke about earlier. I'll have a little break, and then we'll answer a couple of questions from Blue Sky and just some of the questions around our performance. But the game for the first 20 minutes was, I'd say it was very evenly matched. Newcastle were doing what they do, which is transitioning and hitting us fast on the counter, and we were doing what we do in terms of gradually working the ball up the pitch, creating chances from corners, creating moments, and I thought after about 20-25 minutes, this is 2 teams having a good day, but both teams have allowed quite big chances early on. Certainly for us, we had a corner, the scramble after the free kick, so Ødegaard puts the free kick in, where Kai has his shot smothered. There was a load of shots and a scramble after the corner. We had Thomas Partey put Martinelli in over the top, and he overplayed. I think he should have just driven at the goal, and he ends up putting a fairly poor cross in. But then the big one in the first 20 minutes was the Jurrien Timber chance, and I think, and let me just check my notes when that happened. I think this was maybe the best of them all, because it's incredible that he misses it on the 12th minute. Now, the commentators say he's sort of falling backwards or coming down from the jump, and he mistimes the jump. I get that, I do. And I also get that headed chances are a lot harder than chances with your feet. They just are. You can't argue that. Anyone who's played the game knows that it's much harder to control a ball with your head than with your foot. But I can't help but feel, and we had another one in the second half. I should mention Saliba again. I can't help but feel with the amount of chances that we created inside the 6-yard box, to walk away without a single goal is a bit criminal. And this is the pick of the bunch, if you ask me. Timber, I want to go through it, but it is as simple as we put the ball to the back post. Our corner routine worked perfectly. We blocked the keeper. They weren't allowed to get back to defend it, back across their goal. Keeper, defenders, all their team were not allowed to. And Timber has got basically a free header. He beats his man. He's coming down on it, and it looks like he leans back, and it goes straight over the bar. It's one of those where immediately the thing you think is, God, I really hope we don't regret that miss. Really hope we don't. And at that point, I'm thinking, basically for the first 20 minutes, I am thinking, okay, we've allowed them a little bit too much, because they were getting forward, they were playing through us quite nicely. We've allowed them a little bit too much, but we've created the best chance here. So I felt really quite confident, and then on the 28th minute my confidence grew even more, and I felt, okay, we are now in charge of this game, because we had a period where Newcastle couldn't get out, they couldn't transition and counter on us, and Martinelli hits the post. I mean, this is a great piece of football. For anyone that, we will come on to this question, but for anyone that's saying, oh, Arsenal were boring, watch this piece of football. I don't think you can call this team boring doing this. Thomas Partey plays a very good expansive ball out to Trossard, who flicks it inside immediately to Martinelli, who, to be fair to him, takes 2 brilliant touches, driving the ball away from him. He knows he's got a Newcastle defender to his left, so all he does and all he thinks about is creating space and taking advantage of his pace. That's what we want Martinelli to do more of, and be in that situation more. And games against teams like Newcastle, where they are going to try, they are going to, when they get an opportunity, they're going to flood forward. The commentators kept talking about how high their fullbacks were. That gives Martinelli a chance to get in behind and counter their counters, as it were. So this was a brilliant moment for Martinelli to kind of get the ball out of his feet, stride into the positions that we like to see him in, and have a dig. And he goes near post, he beats the keeper, but he does not get it, in the back of the net. He hits the post, it comes straight out. And again, we're just starting to seize control of the game at this point. And again, you're looking at that and the Urian Timber chance in this first half an hour going, okay, well, Newcastle have had chances. It's not like they've not been in it, but they haven't been as good a quality as that. And again, you're looking at this chance going, oh no, did we need that? Did we need that? And at the time, you don't know, but obviously looking back, we know that we really, really did need that. The final chance was we had another corner and Urian Timber it scrambled around. Dubravka really didn't do well on this corner, and it ends up with Urian Timber. He attempts a back heel, and then there's a couple more shots, but ultimately Newcastle blocked everything we threw at them, and that chance was cleared. So a number of really high quality chances in the first 30 minutes for us. I'm not going to sit here and say Newcastle weren't in it. I thought they were good as well, and they were doing their game plan pretty effectively at this point. It was a really even game. That's what I felt at this point. I've discussed the Arsenal chances. There were Newcastle chances as well. I felt this was two very good midfields having a real battle. And we were kind of doing it in different ways. Newcastle were very quick to hit Isaac and then feed it out to either Gordon or Murphy, with Hall and then Livramento on the right hand side supporting them very, very quickly. And we struggled to cope with that because usually how we'd stop that is Saliba and Gabriel go and hit the centre forward and don't allow them to turn and feed those passes out. But I thought Isaac, you could tell he's a cut above in this game. His movement was very, very sharp, and Saliba and Gabriel, I don't want to say weren't able to cope with it because there were plenty of occasions where they did, but he's a very good player, and I think he had a very strong game last night. I think that was probably the crux of it. Whereas we were still working the ball through the middle, and we did a good job for quite a lot of that. Partey was key to us progressing the ball. So yeah, two good midfields doing it very differently, with two defences that probably weren't sharp or the sharpest they could ever be. So we were giving up chances, and two attacks that looked okay for the first 30 minutes, but on the 36th minute, we really dropped our level, and I think it is criminal, this goal. In a game where everything is so tight that we know the margins are going to be tight. It's a semi-final, right? Newcastle are a very good team, and I want to give them their flowers because I will talk mainly about Arsenal today, but I thought they executed their game plan really, really well. It's a game of very tight margins. Football is a low-scoring game, and to allow this to be so easy for Newcastle, there is an element of luck the way it drops to, I think it's Murphy, who then plays the ball across to Isaac. Is it lucky? Is it well coordinated? I don't know. Is it a good run? Again, I don't know. But he's kind of challengeless, and Isaac is also challengeless. Timber is a mile from him. I know he's got his own man. Ødegaard's been pushed, but I don't think it's a foul. I don't think we'd be calling for it if it was up the other end. And he is pushed and doesn't kind of check back. We just allow those two players to get through our lines so easily. Saliba is the only one who really goes and challenges the first ball, and then we are ball watching for the rest of it. So Saliba goes up, tries to win the first header. He doesn't. It's hard to criticise him for that. It was not like he didn't try. It was a good effort. But the ball just is allowed to go through the line from there, and that can happen, right? It can happen that you lose the first header and it just falls to an opposition player, but you have to be reactive. You have to be quick. And I'm looking at Gabriel, I'm looking at Rice, I'm looking at Ødegaard. We're not even making this difficult for them trying to get a block off. It just frustrates the life out of me. And, it's pretty simple for Newcastle. It's a good touch from Murphy, squares it. He's not missing that. Blast it into the top corner, and that's it. It's 1-0. And I put on Blue Sky, it felt, at half time, it felt like two good teams having a really good midfield battle. One team finished their chance and one team didn't. That is how the first half felt to me. You can think of the Timber chance. If that goes in, we're in a much better place. The Martinelli chance, if that goes in, we're in a much better place. So at half time, we'd created 1.96 XG to their 0.9, and we'd had 14 shots to their 5. Those stats really played home to me. Actually, we have not been bad in that first half. We have not finished, and we've defended our box in one moment very poorly. And I'll come on to that kind of theme because I think that is a really important point when we come to the full time. The Gordon goal, I mean, that is really, it's on the 50th minute, and again, it's a head in hands moment because again, I think it is, we've defended our box poorly on 2 occasions in this game, and we've been punished twice. And rightfully so, by the way. I'm not saying that we've been unlucky. At this level, you can't afford to defend your box poorly for 2 occasions in a game. Sometimes you do get away with it, okay? Sometimes you do get away with it, but actually, I think this is very poor. Again, I want to give Newcastle their credit, and especially Isak their credit. He was very good for this goal. But there's a straight ball to him, which he deals with really well and pushes it out towards the right wing. The key point for me in this goal, and I'm just going to make sure, I'm going to get the goal up on video just so I can make sure I'm getting this right. But the key point for me really is the gap that we allow Isak to work into. So yeah, the ball comes forward from Tonali. He gets away from Partey and Rice. I think they've done their job okay at that point because actually they've shielded the defence and turned him around. It's out to Murphy, but as Isak sort of drifts into a space, there are 4 players in a square around him. Partey, Rice, Gabriel and Saliba. The gap is massive. Absolutely huge. And I don't know why one of those players is not like stepping in on him to make it tighter, to make it more difficult, make it harder for him to receive the ball. They're all really experienced guys, but you see when he gets the ball, he's got plenty of time to take a couple of touches, I should say, and shoot. And really, I think we should be dealing with it. I'm just going to play it again. We should be dealing with it when he, as the ball is played from Murphy, and we don't, And I mean, you can go back and watch this goal for yourself. I don't think Saliba covers himself in glory because he doesn't sense the danger at all. He sort of stood there at the right centre back position. Isak gets a shot off. Raya makes. I mean, I don't want to blame Raya for anything. He's done okay there. I think he's made a save from a difficult shot. It falls to Gordon. Timber can't beat him to it, and it's a tap in. And again, it's the same as the first goal. It was just too easy for them to kind of waltz through that line. I think, Carlos Cuesta, it will be having his iPad out and having conversations in that big room that we've seen in the documentary with all of those guys and saying, we can't do that. And the thing that's frustrating is we've played teams this year, plenty of teams, that have a great forward, Gyökeres, Haaland. We've played these players, and Saliba and Gabriel have never done that, in my book. Rice and Partey in front of them, Saliba and Gabriel, there's an argument to say that is our best sort of central defensive group. There's so much experience there. None of them deal with it. So it's so frustrating. And then that theme continues in terms of they were great in our box, we weren't good in our box, and we were rubbish in their box, and they were good in their box. Because on the 57th minute, Havertz, I think he commits a crime really with this miss. And look, I'm Kai Havertz's biggest fan. I think he's so important to this team. I think he does so much for this team, but he did not have a good game last night. I thought he was busy, right? He was active. He was clearly trying, but we couldn't get him in any central areas. And when we did, he missed this terrible opportunity. And I think he did look like a guy who'd been ill. Just missing that sharpness. Compare him with Isak. And I'm not saying compare the profile. I'm not saying compare the quality. But Isak, everything he did was sharp, snappy. And Kai Havertz can do that. But he looked just that little bit lethargic. Looked like a guy who'd been in bed for 4 days. Which is unfortunate. But as this cross comes in, it's deflected from Trossard on the 57th minute. The ball drops to Havertz. And again, it's one of those where, same as the Urian Timber chance and the Martinelli chance, I could say, for Timber, he's coming down off his jump and actually headers are harder. And for Martinelli, I could say, well, he's done well in the dribble and he's beaten the keeper. And for this one, I can say for Havertz, well, it's dropping from a big height. It's a headed chance. It's tricky again. But actually, I don't think we can be discussing those things. They are reasons. They are mitigations. But if we want to go and win trophies, we can't be dealing in these kind of mitigations. We have to finish that chance, especially at 2-0 down. Especially at 2-0 down. Your mind should be laser focused of going, we must get a goal here. And at 57 minutes, if we score this goal, I don't think we lose this game. Because there is plenty of time. Newcastle were already starting to drop into their 5-5 formation. They were just starting to do that at this point. And I do think if we score this goal with over half an hour left, probably 40 minutes with added time, the Emirates gets rocking and we go and get a second. I'm not saying we win it, but with the amount we created and the atmosphere that would have been created in there, I think it would have been a very different game. But, goals change games. Timber scores that chance. Martinelli scores that chance. We're not 2-0 down if those things happen. We establish dominance. Game state matters. Okay? If we score this chance, we probably go to 2-2 because the atmosphere in there is going to be really rowdy and we've got plenty of time to get it back. So it's so frustrating. 63rd minute, we have Saliba from a corner. I mean, how many... We're discussing 3 chances here. 4 chances, really, where we're either in the 6-yard box, clear as day, missed it, or we are through one-on-one with the goalkeeper and we miss it. And, the game progressed very similarly from then on in terms of Newcastle just sat deep in their block. They're fully entitled to do that. We got crucified in the press for it. I'm sure Newcastle have got lots of lovely comments in the press about it this morning, but when we do it, it's a crucifixion against Man City, But, they're entitled to do it. I can't criticise them for that, and I think they were good. Where did this all go wrong then? Where did it all go wrong? I've said it multiple times throughout this analysis already. They were really good in our box. We were rubbish in our box. They were really good in their box. We were rubbish in their box. And I think that's it. I think that is the grand total of this game. And for me, you can look at squad building, okay? You absolutely can. You can look at, do the other players that we've got good enough for Arsenal Football Club? Are they lethal enough? It's horrible having a direct comparison with the player that we want to go and get because Isak looks so sharp. He looked really dangerous. You can talk about all of those things, but actually we've done enough to win this game. And I think the argument for you need a striker, you need a killer, is a lot stronger when we're playing games like we play against Everton, where the chances that we're getting are not like completely gilt-edged and really high XG. Apparently we had 7 shots. I need to ratify this. Apparently we had 7 shots over 0.33 XG. That's incredible. Incredible chances that we created. Not one of them goes in. I don't think that is, you need a really, really great finisher. You don't need a great finisher for the Urian Timber chance. Okay? And that completely changes the game. You shouldn't need a really great finisher for the Gabriel Martinelli chance. For me, this looks like a team, or let's say in this game, this looks like a team that are one so not sharp. That's my big issue. We are so not sharp, and you compare them to Newcastle, who are so sharp at the moment. It doesn't look like we've got any conviction or sharpness to finish these chances. We almost don't believe that they're going to go in. I think that the team maybe have this feeling, as we all feel as fans, they maybe share the same feeling of, we are creating so much in so many games and none of it's going in. How? I wonder if that's kind of eating into their finishing and how they feel when they're in front of goal. Just this kind of feeling of, well, this can't go in, this isn't going in. Whereas you watch Isak and you watch Gordon and it's like every touch that they have, I think they think, God, this is going to be dangerous. This is going to be a problem for Arsenal. We don't look like we have that at the moment. And I do believe we need more in the attacking line. I do believe we need a left winger. I do believe we need competition for Kai Havertz. I'm not sold on the idea of spending 120 million, 150 million on a striker. I think it might be better to go and find a really good left winger to start taking over that first team spot and find a Kai Havertz alternative who offers genuine goal threat and genuine alternative off the bench, or to share some of the games with him. I think that's probably a better way of spending 100 million to get 2 players rather than 1. But all those things being true, I don't think that's what we missed last night. I really don't. I think where this went wrong is our centre-backs didn't have a great game in some moments, and that allowed Newcastle to get control of the game state. And I think we looked so unsharp in the final third that, let's put this scenario in. If we go and get Gyökeres or Isak or someone in the summer, and they've played as many games as we have, as well as, all the players that we have, and we're missing Saka as well, does this look any different? Does it look any different? I don't know. We have been so bereft with injuries, and we've not been able to rotate as much as we want, and we've had so many scenarios where things have been hard for us just because of chance and variance and stuff like that. That actually, if we've got Isak this game and the shoe is on the other foot and they've replaced him with a striker who is fresh, are we in any different scenario? Because £100 million striker who's not sharp, who is lacking fitness, is basically the same as anyone who's not sharp and lacking fitness, right? They are not going to have a really great output if they're not fit and they don't believe in themselves. And that's for me what this team looks like. If you're telling me that Jurgen Timber, Kai Havertz and Gabriel Martinelli can't finish the chances that they have, they're never going to finish those chances, I really don't buy into that, because I've seen them finish harder chances. This was a case of a team that didn't look like they believed in themselves in the final third, that didn't look like they had the sharpness to compete in the final third. And that's, it's really frustrating because things have not gone our way this year. Okay, I'm going to have a little break. We'll come back and talk about the subs a little bit, talk about some questions. One question we got from Blue Sky, but also how do we fix this? And the key question that I think it is going around social media this morning is, are Arsenal boring? Back in a sec. Hello everyone, I just want to interrupt this match review podcast to say a massive thank you for listening to Arsenal Unfiltered. Arsenal Unfiltered is a 3 times a week podcast covering everything about Arsenal, including match reviews and the Arsenal Roundup, which is my news show where we'll talk about injuries, transfer rumours, press conferences, all of that sort of good stuff to keep you up to date with everything going on at Arsenal. One little favour I want to ask you: if you've enjoyed this episode or any episode of Arsenal Unfiltered, what would really help me grow this podcast is if you could go onto your podcast provider and leave me a 5-star review. It really, really helps podcast traction and allows new people to see the podcast more regularly so that we can grow this community. Log on to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, and drop a 5-star review for Arsenal Unfiltered. Thanks very much. Welcome back to Arsenal Unfiltered, the match review of Arsenal 0, Newcastle 2. We spoke in the first half about the key moments, everything that happened, but we also spoke a little bit about where did it all go wrong? Why have we lost this game? And you'll have heard me rant about how we are not good enough in our box or in the opposition box at the moment, and especially last night, right? I think the next question really is, how do we fix it? Because everyone, and me included, will say that this is a talent problem. We need an Isak, we need a Gyökeres, we need our Erling Haaland. And I've said multiple times, I don't think it's necessarily up front where you want to change things too much, because the number 9 position for Arsenal Football Club is such a tactically important position that do so much in the press, that do so much in the build-up, do so much to pull other teams apart, especially when it's working well. So I think we need to be really careful what we wish for, and we have to be 100% that the striker that we go and get is very, very good for the fit. Okay, I look around the Premier League and I look at teams like Manchester United, who spent a lot of money on Xerxes and Højlund, and those 2 players just are not working out for them. And I'm not saying we should have gone and got them or whatever, or they are just names and examples of, you can spend a lot of money on a player that looks like a brilliant fit and looks brilliant in another league or another team, and they just don't fit your style, your system, and your system falls apart with them in it. Okay, so I think we need to be really careful up front. A less tactically important position is left wing, and I think we've really struggled for output from left wing for a while now. Martinelli's doing okay, but for a player at 23 with the potential we thought he had, okay is not good enough. I think if you look at our attacking options, we have 6 attacking slots in our squad. Bukayo Saka is number 1 at the top of that. I think you'd say Kai Havertz is number 2, and I think those 2 are good enough. There are then 3 who, based on form and how they're playing at the time and what our preferences are as fans, that could change around, and they are Gabriel Jesus, Leandro Trossard and Martinelli, and those guys luckily can play in lots of different positions. And then there's Raheem Sterling in the 6th slot, who basically we don't use, can't use. I really don't know what's going on there. If you look at the talent problem for me, I think we need 2 more players. We need a player to come in and enhance left wing, and we need a player to come in and compete with Kai Havertz, or at least maybe be better than Kai Havertz or whatever, but the striker. For me, you would want to go for your superstar on the left wing and find a similar, or no, not similar profile, but a profile that still fits in the system for the number 9 slot, so that you could play Havertz or whoever it is in that forward position. I really don't know. I think Arsenal have got a lot of work to do there. But for me, left wing is where we solve this talent problem. We add output from there. I think if we have a more dangerous left winger, Kai Havertz's output goes up, Bukayo Saka's output goes up, Martin Odegaard's output goes up, because there is more than just one area of threat for Arsenal. I thought Martinelli did okay last night, but we've got a question on Blue Sky from, let me just read the handle out, mcurtisga.bsky.social, who basically asks, is Martinelli having a lack of development, or is he regressing? He doesn't look as dangerous as he does a couple of seasons ago. And I think this is a very fair point. Him and Saka were supposed to be the guys, right? We were very excited, and especially in that 22-23 season, Martinelli picks up 15 goals with Granit Xhaka behind him, and Zinchenko working down the outside as well. And I think we thought, wow, we've got 2 players who are going to go right to the very top. Martinelli was touted by Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool for a number of years there, and they really wanted him. We kept hold of him. And since then, he's had injuries, of course. He's had competition from Leandro Trossard. But he's not kicked on. And I think last season, all Arsenal fans were willing to say, okay, look, we'll give you last season, but we need more from you this season. We haven't had that. We've had spurts. We've had a few goals, but I'm really hesitant to say he's had a very bad year, because he has scored a couple of good goals. He scored that goal against Chelsea, of course, and he has looked, especially, against Newcastle, he looked dangerous, but he is not a killer in the same way that Bukayo Saka is a killer. And I just feel like that is the slot in the team that isn't offering anything else. In terms of all those attacking players, I think Martin Odegaard offers so much in the press and coordinating our team, and in those flicks and passes and touches. And in terms of just dominating an opponent, Martin Odegaard is so key to that. Kai Havertz, again, he is not an output machine, but he gives a good enough output. He was integral in our run at the start of this year, and he does so much for the team. Press allows us to play long when we need to get out of a sticky spot. He really fights with centre-backs. He does a lot of good stuff. Saka, don't need to talk about him. He is obviously one of the world's best players. If you look across all the attacking slots, it's left wing that isn't offering too much more. Even Trossard, he's aging out. He would be, after getting rid of Sterling, Trossard would be the next player I would get rid of out of that 6 to try and upgrade on. And I think you upgrade on Trossard by pushing Martinelli into his role and buying a really world-class left winger. That's personally what I think you do. So I think that's one part of fixing this problem that we've seen. And thank you to M. Curtis for your question. The other thing that I think for how do we fix this, and I touched on it a little bit in the first half of this episode, is we've got to get these guys sharp and fit. Watch that game back, and tell me that or even just look at the stats, tell me there is a big gulf between those 2 teams. Absolutely not. There was the only place where there was a gulf was the final action. The final action from Newcastle was great. The final action from Arsenal was terrible. And that's the crux of it. People will want to go and find a thing to hang their hat on. and say, well, if we'd done this or we'd done that, or someone to blame as well. And, it's very easy to blame Arteta and the board and go, well, why haven't you gone and got us a striker? We win this game if you've got a striker. We win this game if we're sharp. That is true. I don't think Newcastle fans would. I don't think Newcastle fans would disagree with that. I think Eddie Howe came out after the game and said, we survived a couple of moments there. We didn't survive their moments, of course, but they survived ours. And I'm not going to say they got lucky. I don't think that at all. I think they were good, and I want to be very fair on this podcast and make sure that teams that play well against us and beat us get their flowers. But for me, it is really important to remember that actually we have done enough to win this game, or at least not lose it. To be fair, to Newcastle, and we've done enough to have something to go back into the second leg with. And we've not finished those chances, for me, principally because this team looks like they do not believe they can score. They look like how we think Arteta's thinking. They're like, well, if we just make enough chances, one of them will go in. And then when they don't go in, they're like, how? How has that happened? We don't look sharp in the final action. I mean, Timber, Havertz, Martinelli, all of those chances not looking convincing, not looking like they're acting with conviction, and you need energy, you need sharpness and freshness for that. So for me, yes, there's a talent problem. Yes, I want to see us go out and get someone in January and then in the summer. I want to see us spend money, perhaps not 120 million on one player, but we've all got different ways of looking at that. I don't think you can be wrong in that opinion, whether you want us to dump 100 million on Isak or spend 50 million on two great players to augment the forward line. I think both arguments are fair. But this game and a couple of games this year were not because we didn't have a great striker. It's because we have just not got enough options, enough quality options. And whilst Jesus has come into his own a little bit in the last few weeks and scored some good goals, really, we've been looking at Kai Havertz and Bukayo Saka to produce us output, right? They are the ones who have produced output in 2024. Martinelli hasn't. Trossard has definitely not this year. He did, in the early parts of 2024, but this season he's not done that. And if we're always relying on those guys as their form drops off or they get injured like Saka, or they have a bad day or an illness like Havertz has done, we are really bereft of options. And that means we can't rotate these guys. If Gabriel Jesus was a legitimate, really highly competitive alternative option to Kai Havertz, I don't think Kai Havertz starts this game after being in bed for 4 days, basically. So, we've not been able to rotate in the way we want to. We've not been able to cycle our forward line to create other options for output. And I think you are right if you say we need more talent. I think you are right if you say we need more attacking threat. I think you're right if you say if you think we need one really killer player. But I also think you're right in saying actually the players we've got should be doing a lot better, allowing us to rotate more, and we should be in a position where those chances are easier for us to deal with. I don't think there is a world where we thought Martinelli, Jesus, Trossard would have just a handful of goals between them this year. We needed one of them to step up and do better and have a good season. We're not getting that right now. So, look, we need sharpness. We need more talent. That is it. That's the crux of it. We did enough to win last night's game. But we didn't because we didn't have sharp players. That's it. That is it. Are Arsenal boring? I mean, this is a wild question. I really look forward to watching Arsenal this year. I do. I know there's been results that have not gone our way. There's been, a lot of people are talking about Murphy's Law online, which is funny. Kind of everything that can go wrong will go wrong. It does feel like that kind of season for Arsenal. We've had red cards, we've had injuries, we've had illness, we've had mad fixture schedules, we've had crazy penalty calls, all of this sort of stuff that's making us all as a fan base feel kind of mad about this year. I don't think you can say we're boring at all. when was it boring to completely dominate the opposition team in, so many metrics and have so many chances and have 23 shots in a game? When did that become boring? I think people are interpreting the fact that we haven't scored last night as boring because, well, there was a lot of block shots. Newcastle did a good job and we missed a couple of big chances. But actually, there is a world where Timber scores, Martinelli scores, we're 2-0 up, we'll control this game. Is anyone going to call that boring? I don't know. I really struggle to see the argument around us being boring when other teams are sitting in a low block. This is what we've got to do. We've got to play around, try and work gaps into the low block, and we did that. We put in good crosses at times. We created chances. When we couldn't do it, we had long shots, which I think is a positive, encouraging change. Jorginho had one. I think maybe Ødegaard had one. A couple of long shots. So I'm really struggling to see what's boring about it. This is not the Unai Emery horseshoe football where we just kind of go round and round and round. There is a little bit more risk taking. And I said it a few months ago that we need more players in front of the goal, in the 6-yard box, more players flooding that area, more crosses, more chance shots. And I think we are doing that more and more regularly. We are taking higher risk kind of scenarios to cross the ball, to shoot, where we might lose the ball in transition, but we're back in Declan Rice, we're back in Thomas Partey to recover that very, very quickly and get us back on top of the opposition, which is what we're doing. I don't think you can describe a day like yesterday as boring. You can describe it as terrible finishing. You absolutely can. You can describe it as a day where we looked like we just had a bug in the camp and we had no sharpness at all. You can describe it as a day where we needed Gyökeres, we needed Isak, we needed a Haaland. You can do all of those things. But to describe a game where we have 23 shots as boring, and as well, Newcastle, to their credit, did play us a little bit. They came out, especially in the first half, and tried to put counters on us, which allowed us some space to create some opportunities of ourselves. I find it really strange. This is not horseshoe football. We are taking the chances. We are getting people in the box. Last night was terrible in terms of finishing. That's what it was. I don't think you can say it was boring because I was excited by the fact that we were making a lot of chances. We had 23 shots. We took risks. We put balls into the box. We made life difficult for Newcastle in everything but our final action. Everything but our final action. So for me, I don't understand the idea that we're boring. We are not clinical, that's for certain, and we need to be more clinical. A couple of final things before I wrap up. I want to give a quick shout out for Declan Rice. What a performance he had last night. In a night that we could describe as pretty bleak in terms of a fan experience and watching it. I thought he was a real shining light. So many runs into the box. He did not want to lose that game in any way, shape or form, and he put everything out there. So many runs into the box. Every time an Arsenal defender had a ball as well, he was covering so much ground to offer them an option. He was brilliant from start to finish. I thought he was good with the ball. The only thing he didn't really get was a great chance. He had one bad corner as well, but he created plenty of threat from corner. And I actually saw a stat this morning that he kind of added over a goal's worth, like 1.3 goals worth of goal probability added. So, and that was streets away from other players as well. And that's all of his actions, sort of passes, crosses, shots, dribbles, carries, all of that sort of stuff that increases our likelihood of getting a goal. He was a big part of that. So I wanted to recognise that because I thought he did really, really well. Where do we go from here? Well, like I say, we need to get people sharp. We need to find a way to rotate or get games won early so we can take people off. We need to do something that allows people to get sharp because the games are coming thick and fast. We've got Manchester United on Sunday. We've got Tottenham in the league after that. They are obviously not in the same form that Newcastle are in, but if we don't take our chances, those two games are going to get difficult and sticky as well. So we need to change something here, and we need to be in a position where we go into those games and in all of our games moving forward where we are sharp enough to take those chances. We also need to do something in January. I'm convinced of it. To be able to rotate and do those things that I want us to do and keep people sharp, we need a better option than Sterling. We need a better option than Trossard at the moment. They are not providing anything. Trossard's a good player, but this year he's not providing. Jesus is a good player. He's only provided for 2 or 3 games. Martinelli, good player, not providing. So we need a new body in January. Look, I think, just to sum this up, I think however you feel about last night's game is completely fair. Whether you want to look at it and go, we've created so much more in terms of attacking threat, and there's a couple of things to clean up in our defensive area, and a couple of things to clean up in the opposition's penalty box. And if you do that, it's a good night, it's a good performance. And actually, we probably, there's some people who won't value the Carabao Cup as much and just think, okay, well, it's better than we thought it was going to be. Some players are starting to get back. Maybe last night was just a day where it all went wrong in terms of in the penalty area. And you might look at it in the complete opposite way, where you don't really care about the stats and the field tilt and the XG, and you say, look, the thing that decides football games is goals, and we haven't scored any, and they've scored 2. We've allowed that to develop by not having the right players, not having sharp players, not having fit players. However you want to feel about it, I think you both are right, and 2 things can be true at once. One thing that is for certain is it's a disastrous result for Arsenal. It's a disastrous result. I really want us to go and win this competition. I really want us to value the cups and try and get a trophy this season. Whatever trophy it is, I don't really mind. I just want a trophy. I'm not in this camp where it's Premier League or bust. I think the League Cup could be a springboard, and we are now in a very difficult position to overturn this in the second leg away from home. Can we do it? Do I believe we can go to Newcastle and win by 3 goals? I do. Do I think it's likely? No. So we've got a mountain to climb. The thing for me moving forward that we must do is improve our actions in both boxes. Improve our actions in both boxes, and this is a completely different evening. I would not say, however, it's a terrible, terrible performance. I think that's how you can be wrong. If you're looking at this and going, this was all bad, I think you need to go and watch the game again, because it was not all bad. You can be right to be very disappointed about how we performed in both boxes. Absolutely. You can be right to say, well, maybe that's just a bit of Murphy's Law, a bit of chance, a bit of variance, and actually in other games, you play this game 100 times, we win it 90 times. Maybe that's how you feel. But what's for certain is we need a response against Manchester United in the FA Cup. We cannot afford one of those seasons where we basically go out of 2 cups in a week. We've had them so many times, haven't we? And it feels terrible when it happens. So we have to go and beat Manchester United. We are obviously at home again. We've got 5 home games in a row. We've had 1. We've got 4 more. Let's hope that the next game we are much better in the 2 penalty areas and people are fitter and sharper and healthier. I'm going to leave it there. This has been an especially long one, and maybe a little bit of a confused one, because it is a confusing game to watch and difficult to analyse. But, I'll leave you with this final thought of, I really do believe that if we can get these players healthy, we can get them sharp, we can have the same level of conviction Newcastle showed last night in their defensive and offensive actions, that this is still a good team who can go and do really, really positive things. And, I posted on Blue Sky last night, and I think this is a nice one to close on. Actually, when we were with Unai Emery, I remember watching us play really, really poorly and win loads of games and have a very successful run. And it was like, how are we winning these games? Because we are not doing well. This time around, I think we are playing well, doing lots of good things, and not getting results because of our final actions. Everton, Fulham, Newcastle in this game, Brighton. These are the games where it feels like we've played pretty well and we've not got a result. So whilst that might be intensely frustrating, it's a lot less to fix than it was back when we were, with Unai and doing the horseshoe football. There is just a couple of things to fix, and I do think that this team is nearly there. The foundations are there, and despite a result last night, I remain gently positive that there are a couple of tweaks, a couple of players that we could go and get that make this a really, 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 really good team. I will leave it there. Like I said in the middle, please leave Arsenal Unfiltered a 5-star review if you've enjoyed this episode or any episode of Arsenal Unfiltered. It will really help me grow the podcast. and expand the community that we've got going on here. It's really nice to see everyone's responses on Blue Sky and engaging in conversation with you guys. So I really appreciate that. I really appreciate you listening. Hope you have a wonderful day. Don't dwell on this result too much. Kai Havertz will finish that chance in the future. Jurrien Timber will finish that chance in the future, and things will be rosy again. Thank you very much for following. Thank you for listening, and I'll speak to you very soon.